What, now she calls me? Is she out of her mind? Now she can...
Good evening, everyone. You're here on Sound Off. I'm your host, John Blaschke. We're here in the Soundview TV studio. I have a very special guest today. As we are approaching Veterans Day this week, we would like to take the time to remember all those who have served and give them a big thank you. I have the most honored guest I've ever had on the show today, the most honored guest I'll ever have, Captain James Morja and his daughter, Janine. They're going to be talking to us today about the opening of the Veterans Museum and the captain's book that he wrote, and about his experiences in the war. He's a World War II veteran, and he served in the Battle of the Bulge. And it's a great honor for you to be here tonight. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate you being here.
Well, it's really my great honor to be here, because at my age, I think everybody should know that I've been through it all, and right now I am 99 years of age, and of course I'm still in good health, and I hope I can still participate, in the future, and honor our veterans that did so much, and that no one really understands how difficult it was being out in the battlefield, and everybody had to forge for themselves.
Yeah, I have the utmost respect for you, sir, and I'm sure those at home tonight will really they'll at least begin to try to understand the amount of sacrifice that you had to go through in order to be where you are today, for this country where we are.
Well, all I say is that I wrote a little book about being in the Battle of the Bulge, so to speak, because I was right there in the midst of the greatest battle of the century, and I was lucky to be participating there and actually do the duties of a captain of the unit, and I saved many lives doing that, but it was only because of my constant worrying about saving lives and understanding what's going on.
The value of human life, only people like you can really understand how valuable human life is. It's really what you did. It's very heroic what you did, and no one really will be able to understand that. Would you mind telling me a bit about yourself, Captain Morja?
Yes, I would say this, that I was, as a young person, I always did things myself. I was a self-starter, and I tried to not ask people for help, and I tried to do it myself and figure it out. Only at the last moment would I seek help if I thought that I couldn't do it.
So it's kind of a sort of like stubborn approach that you take to your endeavor, just kind of like plowing ahead no matter what.
Well, the big thing is this. I hope that the lesson that we can learn from all this is that each person has to develop a system within themselves on how to get them started. They got to have a self-starter in their system. They just push their own button and not have people push their button.
Yeah, a lot of people, there's a saying where people can make you feel a certain way, but it's only because you only choose to let them have that effect on you. Really, the true power comes from within yourself to strive forward and do what it is that you want to do to feel a certain way, to achieve what you want to achieve.
Well, I'm glad you said that about within yourself. But you know what? A thing like that, being a self-starter and all that, has its own reward. When you're doing that and you're committing yourself to all the fine details, the end product is the self-satisfaction you get from it. It's better than gold and luxury or anything else. It's a good feeling that is created within you.
There's a lot of wisdom in you. I've only been talking to you for a few minutes. I know you're very wise. So speaking of getting started, what made you decide to go into the military?
Well, I always wanted to be regimented and all that, and I really got started in a special way that we had when I went to University of Connecticut, and they had what is known as the ROTC. It was Reserve Officers Training Corps. But you always said, oh, we're not going to war and all that. And in that time, when I was going there in the 1940s, the war was getting a little upset, and people were getting armed and all that sort of stuff, and no one knew what the future would bring. But certain things happened that made me go to the point where I was engulfed in the war and put on the front lines.
You were in the rail splitters, sir? Can you describe
eventually,
what that is?
I didn't graduate. Like, I became an officer, so I had to go through basic training. I had to go to Fort Benning, Georgia, to become an officer, and then get assigned to the rail splitters.
And what did you do as a rail splitter?
Well, the thing that I was at that time was I was a second lieutenant, and they assigned me to a company. And when we were in training in Texas, what I had to do was get coordinated with all the people that know how the troops would react with each other before they go on a mission.
So you had to get an understanding of the of like the unit and understand how
you had to
others
understand your
interact
men and who you were leading, and they had to understand you and had developed a so-called understanding between you. It was understanding about how the Army worked, you know.
So to list a few things, it'd be like camaraderie, communication, and a singular sort of goal to achieve in that unit.
Well, I think the big thing is that you had to realize what the Army was trying to do. The Army was so fantastically efficient that they had 2 words to get people to understand what the real Army was supposed to be. They say, follow me. All they had was just 2 words, follow me. And that was such a tricky statement, just 2 words. And it meant one thing, that if you're a leader, you have to lead. If you're a troop, you have to follow, right? So the funny part about it is this, that if you're a leader, you always got to be in front. You're the guy that have to face the enemy first, you know? And that's how that system works. And it really works.
So you were showing the way for others that were behind you. You had to be the trailblazer, like you said.
They followed my example. In other words, follow my example, not my words. Don't listen to what I'm saying. I can give you a lot of BS and all that, but follow what I'm doing. And if you do that and they follow you, they're going to follow you all the time, because that is the nature of people, to follow the leader.
A lot of people are looking for leaders everywhere, you know, because they just need that inner incentive, and you were the one that gave these men the incentive as their leader. Would you mind telling me a bit about your experiences and what sort of tasks you were assigned to do in the military?
Well, the whole thing is, I was basically infantry, okay? Mm-hmm. And the big thing about infantry is that you were fighting a war on land, you know? And being on land, you had to understand where the enemy was. You have to understand where the front line was, so to speak. So you had to appreciate those things, that the bad fire you're getting is from behind that line. And of course, the enemy knows that they're getting bad fire from your side. So knowing what the enemy can do and what you can do always brought out a good outcome of the battle.
So it kind of goes into the popular saying of understanding your enemy. Because
yes.
When you understand your enemy, that's how you know best to respond to them.
Exactly. That's exactly what you do. And of course, when you're in a foxhole and you're defending the line and all that, you got to make sure that they don't get past you, and you always stop them, you know. And that's what the line is all for. And the big thing is about it, you know, having a line of defense is had to be mobile, because if you had to move back and what have you, you had to flex yourself with the events.
So it's kind of like going with the flow of like
right,
what it
exactly.
is. So
that's
it's understanding like the flow of combat. But would you mind going a bit more into detail about the rail splitters specifically?
Well, I got to say, the rail splitters basically was known as the Lincoln Division. And of course, they didn't want to say this is the Lincoln Division. They had to make it, they had to give it a motto or a symbol. That's what it is, a symbol. Rail splitter. A rail splitter was always a tough guy, and he always got the job done, and he built the country. And getting that name rail splitter from the name Lincoln was a brilliant idea.
Because it's in reference to President Lincoln and
Well,
how
of
he
course
was
it was
quoted.
President
So
Lincoln.
it was
Right. He was a rail splitter, yeah,
right. So he brought the country back together, of course.
exactly.
Would you mind telling me a bit more about the details of your service? Maybe some of the details of what your book is about?
Well, the whole thing is, I got to say that early, in fact, the very first day, I was promoted to assistant company commander from being a lieutenant because 3 of our commanding officers for the company got shot up and they were either killed or lost their life during the very first day of battle. So what happened, right away, we had to take on enormous responsibility of running the country. So I had my friend Lieutenant Thompson and we ran the company for months together and since that first day of battle.
What year was it that you were promoted to the company commander?
Well, I wasn't promoted per se, but I took on the function of being a company commander when Lieutenant Thompson, who was a company commander, and I was his assistant, he had to go on a Paris pass. And they says to him, "Hey, Jim, you're in charge." After he left to go on a Paris pass, everything happened, exploded, and I was responsible to carry on. And I says, "Wow, I never did this before." So right away I had to start putting my helmet on and thinking cap and figuring out what I had to do.
So it was very much a trial by fire?
It was very much about using all the senses in your body and soul to know what's going on and make sure the outcome came in your favor.
And God bless they did. You're still here today. It's fantastic. I'm really a bit floored having you here today, listening to your stories. You're a fantastic person to talk to. Would you mind? Would you like to talk about your book a bit more, though, specifically?
Yes, I wrote a book about and I call it 3-Day Pass. And really, it's a fantastic title, 3-Day Pass, because 3-Day Pass in the Army has to do with taking 3 days off from your duties, okay? But in this book, what I was demonstrating is that I solved a lot of major problems in my life, in industry, and even when I worked for Sikorsky and building missiles that went to the moon and stuff like that. I was working on a Titan 3C missile and all that. They had problems that came up when they were building them, and they says, "Hey, Jim, we got to figure what's what." And in 3 days, I always came up with the answer, you know? And I says, well, you know, in 3 days, I always came out with the answer. And that's the thing I was trying to convey in my book, that you got a problem. Hey, don't just sit on it, do it, you know?
I had no idea that you worked for Sikorsky either going into this. So, but that's
well, I was the chief process engineer at Sikorsky.
So everyone, even after your experience in the Army, people were still coming to you with all their questions about what to do next.
All I know is this, that there's a lot of problems that come up, and I was in a position in a laboratory and all that, where everybody came to there to solve the little problems that came up that weren't covered by the specification. And the consequence of that, I had to write a lot of detailed cookbooks, demonstrations, or specifications that tell you exactly how to do something. And guess what? Before they just say, do it by the specification, do it by the Washington spec, do it by this. That doesn't get the job done. What gets the job done, you got to spell it like a cookbook, and everybody got to go exactly as written in the cookbook to get the job done the same way every time. You want the same product. You want the same efficiency and all that. So that's what I did.
Unbelievable stuff right here. You still have a lot of charisma and enthusiasm.
Well, all I can say is
to see.
there's a lot of things I'm doing now that people say, Wow, you're not doing that. I said, well, I'm trying, and guess what? The main thing is this. If you want to do something and you feel like doing it, do it, because you don't know what your talent you have. You may have a lot of other talents than just reading the newspaper or watching baseball games and things like that. There's a lot of things out there that have to be done. Saving the planet, for instance, we got all this global warming and stuff like that. Did anybody ever think about inventing something for the polar bears so they can float on that thing and get their meal every day? Or do you want them to go in the garbage cans, in people's garbage cans, and get their food? Take your choice.
You heard it here. That's quite an approach to take. Oh, you put me out of lost words. I'm sorry. But they really called you the greatest generation for a good reason. You know, you definitely a lot of drive in your people.
Well, I can tell you a small story about the generation. A couple of years ago, they had this so-called every 10 years in Belgium, they honored the people from the United States, and they pick out 20 people to go to Europe every 10 years, because they have it, what is known as, they call it the what?
Nuts Day?
What?
Nuts Day. N-U-T-S.
Well, they call it the McAuliffe Day. He says nuts in the German, and whatever they call it Nuts Day. Okay, so the King and Queen of Belgium have a group of people from the United States that they honor, and I got this badge from them there, and they gave me another badge, and what happened? I was known as the greatest generation person, and every 10 years, the next 10 years is coming up, and 2023, or 2024, every 10 years, I may be going there again, and they put us up in the best motel in Luxembourg, and it's a Hilton Luxembourg, and it's a beautiful place, and only 20 people are allowed to go there, and I was one of them.
What an honor! I mean, it was an honor to have you there. I'm sure. It's good to see that it makes me happy to see that there's still so much appreciation for veterans everywhere. You know, would you mind telling me a bit more about some of the medals that you have there?
Yes, I think the best medal that I can talk about, and I got to say that what happened was like a fluke that happened, and I was in charge, and they said, all I know was that someone said, we got to see what's up on that hill up there. We don't know what's up on the hill. I was in charge of the company. My lieutenant, the company commander, was away on Paris Pass, and I had to find out what was under it. What do you think I did? Follow me. I went through 2 feet of snow. It was 20 below zero, and I went up the hill. And what happened, there was a German sentry right in front of a barn or something. He says, "Halten Sie." And I didn't even want to bother talking to him. I started running, and he shot at me. Good thing I ran. I'd have been a dead duck, you know. So with that, he made the noise, and I called my troops, "Come on!" And guess what? They ran into the barn, and they found all the German tank crews sleeping in the barn. And that's because I went on that mission at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said, "What's the matter, you guys? Don't you sleep at night?" I had to take the troops out there at 5 o'clock in the morning, because my dad always says, "The early bird gets the worm." I never forgot that. And of course, that corresponds with another story where George Washington, he became a barefooted general with barefooted men, and he got to Trenton before the Hessians got woken up, and the Hessians surrounded and they surrendered, and from that moment on, everybody in the country got behind George Washington, and they changed the whole pattern of the whole country.
Out of the trend. It was
Because
Christmas
George
Eve.
Washington got there before 6 o'clock too.
Early bird. That's right. I kind of have a similar story. My grandfather, he also served in the Battle of the Bulge, and it's a bit of a similar story. I don't want to talk about myself or my grandfather's stories too much. This is about you. But it's a very similar story where my grandfather, he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and a similar situation happened where they were by their tanks because he was a communications operator in a tank, and they were just resting for the time, but they were on the brink of the forest, and they found these rifles that were left by the Germans, and for fun they started shooting into the woods, and a platoon of Germans came out with their hands up because they thought they'd been discovered.
Oh, that was a remarkable incident, right?
Yeah, quite
Yeah,
something like that, yeah.
But you know what? I think at that point, I think that even the Germans got deterred, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were deterred.
Sure. It was such like, oh, we're having a caller here. Hello, you're on Sound Off with John Blaschke, Captain James Borgia, and his daughter, Janine.
Thank you, John. Listen, I wanted to ask who did he serve under? What general did he serve under? Was it Omar Bradley? Was it Patton?
Did you
Which
serve
general?
under?
In Europe.
Well, we had a in our 84th Division, we had a general. I'm trying to think of his name right now.
Church?
Was
it Church?
I don't know. Speak louder, Gene. What?
General Church.
No, it wasn't General Church. It was he was the assistant general, General Church. I'm trying to think of his name. I'm so ashamed not to think about it right now. I'm a little sensitive right now.
How about this? When you got to Europe, how did you arrive in Europe?
Well, we arrived in Europe in a safe way. We didn't have to invade it. We took a troop ship to England, and then we took another sloper sail ship from England and got onto the beaches of France. And there was no fighting there because most of the fighting, we got there after 30 days after D-Day. So all the fighting was interior and on the German border. So we had to go with the Red Ball Express, go up to the German border to start the fighting.
All right, so your troop actually came through France into Germany.
Yes, we were trucked through France. That's right.
Came through Italy.
No.
You were providing reinforcements
We came
to
through
those.
France, right.
Right.
We came through France, and we went directly through Paris up to the Holland-German border.
So when do you actually see any real action?
That's where we saw the reaction. We got to Holland. We ran into what is known as, you'd never believe it, the most fortified acreage in the whole world. It had pillboxes, it had trenches, it had communication trenches, it had artillery behind it, all that. And it was the most highly defended thing, and we had to go through that.
The Maginot
Siegfried
Line?
line, they call it. The Siegfried line. And believe me, it took us 1 whole month for a whole division to go 1,000 yards. Think about it. We had a tough time there.
We have another caller here. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Oh. No? Oh, we must have lost the other caller. Sorry about that. What did you say the name of the line was? I thought it was the Maginot Line?
No, that's Siegfried line.
6 feet line. Okay.
Siegfried.
Oh, okay.
You
German.
remember Siegfried, the German, he was a German saint of some sort, right? Siegfried. Right.
Okay. I wasn't sure if the other person was going to call back, and I wasn't sure I want to get it. Is there anything else that you would like to say about your service or any of the pictures here?
Well, I got to say one thing, that this may sound pretty bad at this time, that somehow or another, when I took command of my company and all that, and I knocked out 3 German Tiger tanks, I didn't realize at that time, when I knocked out those 3 Tiger tanks, that they were in position to shoot up the town of Bayho. Now, Bayho was a little valley town just overlooked by these farms. And what happened? The Germans at 7 o'clock would have bombed up the whole town. And guess what? I didn't know that we had 5,000 American troops sleeping in the town with the villagers. And it was 20 degrees below zero, and there was 2 feet of snow. And guess what? I kept the Germans from shooting up the town and saved 5,000 lives.
There's another question.
Thank you. That's amazing. Is there another caller there? You're on sound off. Hello?
Hey, how you doing? Hi, Janine. Mr. Jim, this is Bill Bryan, one of the founding members of the museum.
Hi, Bill.
I want to let them know that your father has a very special talent, and he has a great voice for 99 years old. And he will be singing the national anthem at our grand opening on Saturday.
That's fantastic.
It's a pleasure and an honor to do that, sir, and I'm ready and able to do it yet.
And can I just mention
Yeah.
that the Stratford Veterans Museum is opening, like a soft opening on Saturday, the 13th, at 11 o'clock. There'll be a ribbon cutting, and there'll be a color guard, and the mayor will be there. And the town of Stratford is going to find out that the men that put this museum together did an absolutely wonderful job. Inside are so many memories and memorabilia that people have donated. Any veteran that lived in Stratford is eligible to be in the museum. You should contact the people that are at the museum. And I think there is a place you can go online, stratfordveteransmuseum.org, and you can find out how wonderful this place is that they made for everyone. It's going to be a town treasure, I know it is, in decades to come. All the wonderful servicemen that went through there. Also, the Blue Star members who never made it home. True heroes, and they are remembered in a special place in our museum. So it's very nice and very special.
I can't wait to go myself.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did a beautiful job,
Yeah.
and I'm really looking forward
And
to
I just
going.
want to put a shout out to Coach Bob Mastroni, the president of the museum. He's put together a wonderful team of men that really had a vision, and they carried it through. And every room is a treasured place to be when you get there.
It's a great way to carry on the legacy
Yes.
of great men like this. Absolutely. I think we have another call here. I guess I should figure out how to operate this phone. Sounds like I dropped another call. My apologies. I brought a few things of memorabilia myself. This is the newspaper for when FDR was buried, but I wasn't sure if you remember anything about the Elbe bridgehead, because they talk a lot about the war effort in this newspaper article too.
Oh, wow.
Okay, here's an article here that I want to say that I really had nothing to do with crossing the Elbe River, because the Elbe River, what happened before we got to the Elbe River, we had to go into the town of Hanover, and guess what? He says, "Hey Jim, you got to reach Task Force Church into Hanover." I had to walk 5 miles down a foggy road to take 5,000 men down into Hanover, and I lost my runner there, and what happened? Some snipers shot into our column, you know. So, but the big thing is this: when I was going to the Elbe River with my troop, they says, "You go back to Hanover, and we want you to set up a Repo-Depot school to train new troops." Okay, so I had to go back to Hanover. There were about 2 million Germans there, and the town was utterly destroyed, and there was hardly anything waving in Hanover except white flags. So that was a fantastic experience for me.
Captain Morja, it's been such a great pleasure having you here. Unfortunately, that half hour runs pretty quick. We're kind of running out of time here. But is there anything else that you would like to mention? Any important takeaways from your service that you would like to tack on here at the end?
All I can say is someone up there is looking after me all the time, and I thank you again for saving me and making me through the whole war without getting putting any Band-Aids on me. So thank you very much again.
Thank you again. Captain Morja and Janine, it was a pleasure having you here. unbelievable experience. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
your service.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's
you
been
so
an
much.
honor. That's been Sound Off for this evening. Everyone, remember Veterans Day. Take care. I'll see you next Tuesday.